SuperTalk Mississippi media production.
Ready for the next level of real personalized banking? Muna's ITMs are like a teller in your car. That's right, from 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, using one of Muna's ITMs at our main branch in Marion or Collinsville makes it so easy to bank with us.
This is Gerard Gibert, and thank you for listening to MidDays here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
MidDays with Gerard Gibert is on the air. MidDays with Gerard Gibert is powered by C Spire. Power your home or business with C Spire Fiber. To learn more, visit supertalk.fm/C Spire. C Spire Fiber powers SuperTalk Mississippi. Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. You're listening to MidDays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to MidDays, SuperTalk Mississippi. I'm your host, Gerard Gibert, along with Rhino in the Element Wealth Studio, guiding you through the middle of your day with facts, fodder, and fine music on this
Friday Eve.
All right, we got the producer price index. It was tame. This, of course, is the measurement of the cost of inputs to the production process essentially at the wholesale level, as opposed to the consumer price index, which would be a measurement of inflation at the retail level, what you and I pay for goods and services. It came in a bit muted, really on track with expectations. So despite the tariffs, really haven't, at least at this point, haven't seen any major impact. Now, goods prices, excluding food and energy, rose 0.2%. And that was in line with expectations. Services prices, 0.1% is what was reported as part of the PPI. Now, analysts pay close attention to the PPI because some of its components serve as an input to the Fed's preferred calculation of inflation, the PCE, the Personal Consumption Expenditure Price Index. And that's still rising, but it has moderated somewhat. So that's also caused the 10-year to pull back. It's now below 4.5%. That's good news for interest rates. The president also has indicated he's ready to make a change for the role of Fed chairman. Too late Powell, he calls him. He's ready to bring somebody else in. It is rumored that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent heads the list of prospective replacements to the current Fed chairman, Jerome Powell. Wouldn't it be something if he did replace Powell, brings in Bessent, and he immediately drops interest rates? I'm not sure if that's going to happen, but that certainly is the buzz around Washington. Companies in general have kind of struggled to navigate all the twists and turns since the trade policies went into effect a couple of months ago. Still a bit unclear. The president also intends to send letters to trading partners in the next couple of weeks, setting unilateral trade rates, tariff rates, ahead of this July 9th deadline he put out there, where he would reimpose higher duties on lots of different economies. That was announced a while back. So it's been on and off, and that's kind of where we stand right now. We're sort of in the middle of the pause that was announced. we shall be on the lookout for where that goes. But overall, the producer price index remains relatively tame. So that's good news for the economy from an inflation perspective. There's also reports that many nations are absorbing the tariffs that have been imposed and just not passing those on. You wonder if that's sustainable, how long that lasts. And all that means is that since American companies actually remit tariffs to the Treasury, they're the ones who pay them. What the American companies are doing that are importing these goods, they're negotiating with producers abroad and saying, look, we understand there's a tariff. You understand there's a tariff being imposed on us now for the goods we import from you. You got to help us out here. So they drop their prices to offset the tariffs American companies then have to pay when they're importing these goods. Apparently,
just like was explained when all of this started.
That was one of the optional expectations. That's absolutely right. That hey, look, if we put pressure on these other countries, they'll yield and they'll absorb it.
It's almost like they need us more than we need them.
Yeah, and they still need that revenue. They need that business. They need that volume. So at this point, it's not clear that there's any significant impact to the economy on the imposition of the tariffs. Really no shock in the markets or anything like that we're seeing. All of them haven't been implemented, so we still have some time to go to see what happens. And there are a lot of economists that say that, hey, much of what was procured as part of the producer price index happened pre-tariff. It's really hard to tell. I mean, that could be all over the map. You'd have to do some really detailed analysis to determine that. And I don't know that has been done. But that's the situation right now with respect to the tariffs and inflation, which is something the president committed to get under control. So at this point, both the producer and the consumer level, that appears to be the case. I don't think everything has been filtered through the economy yet. Still got a ways to go there. But so far, good news. Hold on to your hat. Republicans in Congress and the House, also, we should pass this on. They passed a procedural measure yesterday out of committee to pass the White House's rescission package. It's some $9.4 billion, and it includes canceling future spending. That's what rescission packages are. This would be spending that was previously approved. So this particular measure would cancel that spending which was previously approved with a simple majority in the Senate. Thus, it can be rescinded with a simple majority. $9.4 billion. Most of that's some of this crazy foreign aid that the Doge team exposed. And we got to give some credit to the CBO and some members of Congress that have also been calling attention to this. Rand Paul, in particular, does a pretty good job of that. He has his annual Festivus list and reads out all the crazy stuff. So it's nothing new here. I think Doge kind of brought it into focus and got a lot more national attention in that regard. But this $9.4 billion rescission package includes that. Lots of that crazy foreign spending, plus essentially defunding of NPR and PBS. So lots of their future funding would be rescinded should this bill pass and get to the president's desk for a signature. So it's passed the first procedural hurdle. Now in the Rules Committee, it gets through that hurdle, then to the floor. The House would pass it, send it down to the Senate. Not exactly sure what that procession looks like. We've only defined it, Rhino has, for the Mississippi capital, not the U.S. capital.
Oh, they got gold-plated jetpacks and stuff we can't even comprehend because they just got money to burn up there in D.C.
True. Yeah, they probably go around the world and then land at the room down the hall, right?
Oh, yeah.
So that's where we are on that. That's $9.4 billion. Now, just for perspective, guys, and I don't want people saying, "Oh, you're not for that." No, I'm all for this. I want them to do this. It's 3 days of interest expense. I just want you to know how dire the situation is, how serious it is. We spend $3 billion a day on interest,
and yet, still to this point, not a single Republican in the halls of Congress has come out and stood in front of a camera and said, look, come midterms, you got to give us 60 votes in the Senate or we can't make any real changes. No, It's just infighting, backbiting, and whatever they can say to get their face in front of the cameras so that they can get a little thing for their campaign, not for the betterment of society.
Yeah, that's absolutely true, which is good. So, I mean, it's good in that we're calling attention to it as you are, because you're right. I think there's a lot more focus on them getting attention than there is actually producing something of substance.
Or even trying to explain why the people that are just are being stupid.
Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety, Sean Tindell, is on at 11:05. This segment of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by Covington County Hospital in Collins, where your health matters.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
Let's do this.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Let's go.
So this $9.4 billion is certainly something. It's a start. It's good. We need to do it. But I sure do wish we'd make a serious attempt to address the deficit spending, and I don't feel like that's the case here. That's
well, that's what I was talking about. Without 60 votes in the Senate, there's not a whole hell of a lot they can do. Because the Democrats aren't going to vote for any of it.
Right. Certainly on the mandatory side, there's no doubt about that. On the discretionary side, when you've got proposals to increase defense spending by $150 billion and there's some commensurate cuts in non-defense discretionary spending by about the same amount, of which stuff like this would be part of. So this, just to be clear, this is going backwards. This is simply canceling future spending. It's in a couple of months when we run out of money that the Congress is going to once again appropriate discretionary spending. That's looks like that's going to occur in the August-September timeframe. That's when we run out of money again. So they will appropriate. And so what we'll be looking for is that all this craziness in the non-defense discretionary spending, which includes USAID and NPR and PBS and lots of other programs, that they will reduce that. Right now, the budget package that the Senate's considering that passed the House, the 10-year framework, if you will, does provide for a reduction of roughly $150 billion a year, but it's offset by $150 billion a year of more defense spending. So we're really not achieving any cuts to spending. There's offsets on the discretionary side, and the mandatory side is basically on autopilot. There are some cuts included in that, or what are thought to be cuts. There are reforms to the Medicaid program, the SNAP program, nothing of significance to Medicare or Social Security, but Medicaid and SNAP, of which are two big spending categories on the mandatory side, the statutory side. So there's some reforms. We went through that yesterday. 3 major reforms to Medicaid. Those are expected to reduce Medicaid spending. And then we've got the enhanced subsidies in the ACA exchanges. Those will expire at the end of the year, so that will certainly trim some of the spending there. There are 270,000, last I checked, Mississippians that are on the ACA exchanges. That sounds kind of high. I probably need to check that again. But most of those, if not virtually all of those, do receive some form of subsidy from the federal government to offset the premium cost. And at this point, those enhanced premiums, which were enacted in the Inflation Reduction Act, were temporary when they passed. That's the only way they could do it to avoid the 60 votes. That comes into play this year because those expire at the end of the year. And there's nothing in the bill, which is good news, that would continue those enhanced subsidies. So we'll be back to the subsidy model that was in place before the Inflation Reduction Act passed, of course, under Joe Biden. The president, by the way, just took to the podium at the White House. He's signing measures which would block the California EV mandate rules. He's been talking about this, and it looks like that is set to happen. I'm not exactly sure how that works, that the president can sign an executive order that bans what a state has enacted at the state level, so I'm not sure how that works exactly. But that's what he's holding a press conference about, and that's being reported right now. I think California was wrong. I think they were way too aggressive with their time frame on that. I'm not sure there should ever be a time frame. I don't know that I agree, honestly, that there should be any mandate that requires and limits your choices to only electric vehicles. Let the market sort that out. We don't need government involved in that, no more than we need tax credits to go buy EVs. We don't need that either. I'd like to see that get an even bigger haircut than what's happening in the big, beautiful bill, honestly. That's an area we could cut some future spending out on. So that's what's going on with respect to Washington. We've also got Dr. Lance Evans, Superintendent of the Mississippi Department of Education, joining middays at 12:05. We will get an update on his thoughts about the Mississippi Department of Education receiving a very high ranking, 16th in the United States. Also, it looks like there's going to be some pullback of funding that goes to the states from the federal government for lots of things, which would include education. Get his thoughts on that as well. There's a good article on the SuperTalk.fm website about the Department of Education's recent 16th ranking that was bestowed upon them. And then we had a big plane crash last night. Rhino, it happened early in the morning, our time, in India. I think 200 expected dead in that crash, more than 200 on board. I mean, it was a fiery crash.
Yeah, the number I saw was 204 souls on board, I believe.
Okay. So it'd be surprising if anyone survived. I haven't heard any reports.
Yeah, I haven't seen many updates.
Well, that was, and it was a Boeing. And of course, Boeing immediately tanked a 737, I believe, and Boeing tanked.
It was a 787.
Oh, was it a 787? Okay, my apologies. I was reading in bed about this morning. A 3 and an 8 probably looked the same without my glasses on there. So, but that's a
242 souls.
That's what I thought. Yeah. So that's interesting because that's a very modern, maybe their most modern aircraft. 240 sounds right. You said 202 have perished, is what we know at this point. I would be shocked if there were any survivors. Just looking at the description, reading the description of the crash.
Yeah, it was a 787 Dreamliner.
Okay. I mean, that's a very modern aircraft, and it happened on takeoff, right?
Yeah, shortly after takeoff. And the latest update I'm seeing is from Suhasini Raj. Just reached the site of the plane crash. Area smells heavily of smoke and fire, and they've got pictures of the heavy machines trying to untangle all the rubble from the building and the plane. And yeah,
Wow.
Doesn't look good for finding any well, no, it doesn't look like it's going to be a good thing for finding survivors.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking as well. So, man, really, really sad situation. By the way, updated data on the number of Mississippians who were enrolled in an Affordable Care Act marketplace plan, also known as Obamacare, 330,000. Wow. So my data was a little dated. I think it's been 6 months or so since I checked that. 24 data. This is 25 data. So the data I have was 270, so 60,000 more. Wow.
The plane apparently crashed at the campus of a local medical college.
Oh, man. Man. Hate to hear that. So the president also on cue there. He's calling on Jerome Powell to lower interest rates. And I'm sure he's citing the rather muted PPI report and the recent CPI report saying you need to lower interest rates. And I know one of the things he talks about is getting the rates lower so the cost of interest on federal debt would also be reduced commensurately. Not sure that Powell at this point is convinced that we're in a position to lower interest rates with respect to inflation being under control. Thomas says it's pilot error.
I saw that reported, but I haven't seen it confirmed.
Yeah. Okay, so that's interesting, though. Pilot error, really hard to tell. Thomas says, even with the 60 votes, I doubt Republicans would cut spending. The BBB should be proof enough. Well, even with 60 votes.
It's kind of circular logic there.
Yeah, that's what I was about to say. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
From the Seabrook Paint. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on
SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It's Middays. I'm laughing because Rhino just sent me a video of a protester that is literally form tackle. I mean, really good form there. Sign him up for the football team, right?
If he doesn't have a scholarship, he needs one.
And it described the scene here. It's a protester that's confronting law enforcement. Looks like the sheriff's department. And hurls some object at the sheriff,
it looks
right?
like one of those metal water bottles.
And they're literally 10 feet apart, standing on the sidewalk. Yeah. And so he hurls that at the sheriff, turns around, starts kind of jogging in the other direction. The sheriff then hits him in the back. What's that?
Those are the paintball guns loaded with pepper balls.
Okay. Hits him in the back. And then all of a sudden, boom, out of nowhere comes this dude, shorts and a T-shirt, and just puts him on the ground in this perfect form tackle. I mean, he's literally got the shoulders just planted right there at the middle of the body, wrapped him up, head to the side, like everything you're taught to do, right, to tackle, and just drills him and drives him backwards into the concrete on his back.
At which point, what appears to be a firearm squirts out of the perpetrator's pants. And then the guy that form tackled him rolls over on his back and holds his hands up, and the police kind of swarm past him, not even really paying him much attention.
It's incredible. Man, it's peaceful though. I'm glad for that. Right?
That's what they're trying to portray in the mainstream media. They'll go out there in the broad daylight and oh, look, they're dancing. They're blowing bubbles.
Unbelievable.
Yet none of the news people want to talk to anybody once the sun goes down.
I mean,
you'd think they'd want to interview these quote-unquote protesters to find out what they're protesting about.
Just amazing that they could use their eyes to visualize the events, what's going on, the actions, and then describe it as peaceful. That's crazy. It's anything but that. Now, they're also trying to make this lame excuse where it's only relegated to a few blocks. It doesn't really matter. What matters is that you're engaged in illegal activity, destructive violence.
Yeah, the replies
American
online
city.
to it's only a couple of blocks have been a bit sad that it's come to this, but also humorous. Like, I think the most extreme example I saw was somebody who had the map where they've got the little dot, and it's like, this is where the protests are happening. This is where the fires are. And then they show the rest of L.A., and then somebody next to it puts, well, this is a map of Manhattan, and this is where the trade towers were.
Oh, my gosh. I mean, this is just really sad that this is going on. I mean, it's disgraceful, and it should be put down. I totally agree with that. And I think the president's right for mobilizing the National Guard and other military assets at his disposal to quell this violent activity. This is crazy. I mean, you're firebombing businesses and encircling vehicles, setting them
Almost
ablaze
like Trump
as well.
learned his lesson to not let the local Democrats let it get out of hand. Nip it in the bud.
I agree. I think you're right. He did not hesitate.
He tried to be as hands-off as he could be in 2020 because he was trying to win an election, and, well, now he doesn't have to worry about that.
Yeah, I agree. But, again, when you've got illegals on motorcycles with foreign flags that are encircling somebody's vehicle that's been set ablaze in the middle of a street.
While you have cartel and taxpayer-funded paramilitary groups like the Brown Berets distributing accoutrement to the protesters like full face masks and projectiles.
How do you look at that and conclude this is peaceful? I mean, they're still saying it. And now, of course,
the people that say it's peaceful are the kind of people that wash their brains out in the shower every morning.
Oh, man. And, of course, they're ascribing all this to the president, right? You're seeing the mayor of Los Angeles.
It couldn't possibly be because ICE hit a cartel-run front, a money laundering front, on Friday, and the owners of said front tried to lock them in.
Yeah, exactly.
But sure, Trump's the one that escalated things.
They are definitely blaming him for it. Maxine Waters, who's a complete fool. Gavin Newsom, the governor. The mayor, Karen Bass of Los Angeles, all are saying this is Donald Trump's fault because he sent in ICE agents to raid a business that was harboring illegals. Now, what did you tell us yesterday that we discovered there's like money laundering or something going on?
Yeah, it's a money laundering front for the cartel.
Oh, okay.
The warehouse they hit, or storefront they hit.
So we should just look the other way and let that happen, because these are really wholesome, law-abiding, undocumented immigrants that have entered our country that are contributing to society. That's what they want you to believe.
Well, I mean, if you listen to Katy Perry and Kim Kardashian, it's because California was owned by the Mexicans, so therefore they have a right to it.
Oh, my God. I hadn't heard that
Even though
one.
the Mexicans owned it for about 20 years and sold it to the U.S., and the U.S. has now had it for 170 plus.
Unbelievable. So, okay. So this kind of reminds me of this period we went through in 2020 where every corporation in America, it seems like, was having meetings, and they'd start the meeting by apologizing to the people who owned the land like 5,000 years ago.
Yeah, the woke opening prayer.
That's right.
For the woke religion.
The one from Microsoft, I'll never forget that one. They started out by naming off all the Indian tribes that at one time owned the land where the facility rest that they were meeting in. And they, where did they even do the research to come up? You remember all the like names, like, who the heck is that? Nobody knew who these tribes were. And then they introduced themselves, what they were wearing, and the color of their hair.
Well, the irony of that was, well, why did it change hands so many times between this many tribes?
That's
Could
true.
it be they got conquered? And what happened to the last Native American tribe? Oh, that's right, they got conquered.
Huh. Yeah, they didn't bring any of that up.
And the ultimate irony is this: all these people saying, well, California and the Southwest belong to Mexico. No, it belonged to Spain. And these are the same people that were gung-ho for tearing down the statues of Christopher Columbus, who was pretty much the reason Spain had all those holdings.
Unbelievable. Well, I haven't seen that, the woke opening prayer. Hopefully we're past that era at this point.
Oh, I'm sure somebody out there is still doing their performative act.
That was like the ultimate, just fakey, disingenuous virtue signaling. Was it not? I mean, when you're apologizing to people who haven't inhabited the planet for hundreds and hundreds of years, maybe thousands in some case. I'm sure they went and figured out the cavemen, right?
No, that's the other sad part, is the time scale they use is laughably short.
Okay.
And our understanding of the peopling of the Americas is laughably lacking.
Yeah.
I mean, think about what you were taught growing up, going to school, about how the Native Americans came to the United States. I don't really know what you might have been taught in your generation, but my generation was taught that there was a land bridge between Russia and Alaska during the Ice Age, where the ice caused the sea levels to recede, and there was a land bridge, and peoples from Russia traveled across that land bridge, across the Bering Strait, down the Pacific Northwest, and spread out across North America and then eventually South America.
Unbelievable.
Except there's one problem. There are archaeological footprints that have been found in the White Sands Desert that date back to 20,000+ years. And the ice-free corridor they would have to use to get there wouldn't have existed in that time period.
All the crazy apologies. That's just, I mean, you could do that interminably. It's just dumb. Just do it your business. Take care of it. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Hey guys, this is Are we going to do this?
Middays with Gerard Gibert
Keep rolling. 3, 2, 1.
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We're back with you in the Element Wealth studio. It's middays. Well, the president's still speaking at the White House. He said, I'm killing the California EV mandates forever. And he says Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell is a numbskull, turning up the heat on the head of the Federal Reserve to reduce interest rates. He said, quote, we're going to spend $600 billion a year, $600 billion because of one numbskull that sits here and says, I don't see enough reason to cut the rates now. I can't make the $600 billion figure work mathematically. It would save us some money. Our average interest rate on our debt right now, the $36 trillion outstanding, is about 3.5%, a little less than that. And so cutting it would certainly reduce the interest cost. I don't think it would cut it by 2/3. So $600 billion is roughly 2/3 of the $1 trillion of interest. But it certainly would cut it. On the C Spire text line, someone asked, what do you think about ending the Federal Reserve? I'm looking for it. I don't know what happened to that text, Rhino. Maybe the person sent something else in. I'd like to see the markets have more of an impact and be the dominant force in setting interest rates and not the Federal Reserve. I mean, there is some value in what the Federal Reserve does as far as backstopping banks. But you could do that without the Fed having control over the benchmark interest rate. So I'd like to see kind of a hybrid organization set up. On the C Spire text line, we were talking about the Democrats wanting you to know that these protests are limited in scope as far as the area affected. And on the C Spire text line, that's 601-879-4395. It affects those people who live or have businesses in those few blocks. I agree. That seems rather flippant and uncompassionate. Don't they always lecture us about lacking compassion? Well, that lacks compassion. Aren't those residents, those businesses, entitled to the same protections as the rest of the city, which is not under siege? I mean, that's crazy. Their comments about that. I totally agree. Philip on the coast says, nip it, Andy, nip it in the bud. Of course, taking the cue there from Barney Fife. I agree. I think it's the right thing to do. It'll be interesting to see what happens this weekend with all these No Kings protests scheduled. I know we talked about that a bit yesterday, but you're seeing lots of momentum and energy build up around this. Lots of nutcases involved for the most part.
It is humorous that they're going to claim it's a peaceful protest, but the iconography of the No Kings logo has a crown and what appears to be blood dripping from it. But it's supposed to be peaceful, remember.
Well, that's rather curious. On the C Spire text line, Donald in Oxford reports, my company had a national meeting scheduled for Anaheim in late July. They just had it moved to Dallas because of these riots. We're set to spend $6 million on this meeting. Crazy. Wow. Yeah, I'm a little surprised at that. Anaheim is a good piece away from where all this is going on, but I get it. Out of an abundance of caution, you never know the prospect of that spreading. So these fools are affecting like the businesses in Anaheim, by the way, that would have benefited from this. Do they not know that their actions actually are counter to what they're trying to achieve? And maybe I don't understand what they're trying to achieve. Maybe that's the problem there.
I don't think they fully understand what they're trying to achieve. They're just going through the motions of what they're told to do for the most part.
Man, oh,
and the
man.
people in charge are simply trying to do whatever they can to retain or gain power.
On the C-SPAC, you're right. It's okay. Those businesses have insurance. That's the Dems say. I have seen that. We saw that during the BLM riots. Oh, the insurance will pay for that, which shows a complete lack of understanding of how insurance works. Like justifying destruction of property. If everybody had that attitude, just let insurance pay, there would be no insurance. You wouldn't be able to protect your life, your property.
Well, to the average dumb Democrat, insurance is free money because most of the Democrats don't actually pay for quote-unquote insurance, their own freaking Medicaid.
I think you're right. We are stepping aside for a break. It's time for Fox News and SuperTalk News. When we come back, we've got Commissioner of Public Safety Sean Tindell coming in the Element Well studio.
Your hour of Middays with Gerard Gibert is brought to you by the Mississippi Business Journal. Visit msbusinessjournal.com. Scott Coopwood, publisher and president.
Welcome to the show that challenges you to think deeply, and look beyond political posturing. You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. It is hour 2 of Middays. We're live in the Element Well studio on this
Friday Eve.
We're pleased to welcome now the Commissioner of the Department of Public Safety, Sean Tindell. Good to see you, Commissioner. Thanks for coming in.
Good to be here, Gerard.
Give us an update. What's going on at the Department of Public Safety these days?
Well, we have been busy, and it's, of course, that time of year where we're looking at retirements coming in at the end of June as folks go on and move on from their years of state service, and June 30th seems to be the time a lot of folks do that. So we're reorganizing some things around our offices, and, of course, just graduated a new cadet of state troopers, and proud to have them out there working and not only on the highway patrol now, but we've got a state trooper that graduated who's been assigned to Capitol Police and another one assigned to MBN. So, trying to broaden the scope of what we do when these folks graduate from the trooper school, where they go and how they serve the state of Mississippi. So I think those are some good things going on. And, of course, we've got our MBI Most Wanted list that we've put out working with Crime Stoppers and had some good success with that just within a matter of a couple of weeks, called 3 of the Most Wanted. And that gave us a little room to add another group to the Most Wanted list, which are the folks that are pushing out these scams across the state. And my phone started blowing up last week with I'm getting notices that I haven't paid my fines and the DMV is going to revoke my license. And it started off with my son at breakfast and ended the day with about 30 more texts and calls wanting to know if that was real. So we added these folks to our most wanted list. We're going to try to figure out who they are. If we can catch them, we're going to hold them accountable. But the reality is that the best way to address this is make the public aware of these scams and prevent it from anybody from sending them any money, and just letting folks know that if you get a text notice saying that you owe a fine in Mississippi, it's likely a scam. If you get it saying that you owe it to the DMV, I can assure you it's a scam, because Mississippi doesn't have a DMV. We have a Driver Services Bureau. You have a tax collector in your area that you get your car tag from. The Department of Revenue keeps your car titles. We don't have a DMV in Mississippi. You might also get a text, and we've seen this one going around, that you have unpaid tolls. I'll remind folks, we don't have toll bridges in Mississippi. So if you get a text in Mississippi saying that you owe unpaid tolls in Mississippi, we don't have toll bridges. So you just got to be vigilant when you get these types of messages. And more than likely, if you do owe something to the state, if you have unpaid fines, if you have unpaid taxes, you're going to get a letter, and then you need to contact that agency directly. Don't just go to the website on the letter. Look it up and make sure you're contacting it, and call your local law enforcement and check with them, and they'll let you know if it's a scam. Call us. We'll let you know if it's a scam. And they're getting more and more sophisticated. Same time last week, I got calls. Folks were getting notices that there was a warrant out for their arrest. If they didn't pay the fine immediately, they were going to go to jail for failing to appear for a federal grand jury. Actually had the judge from the Southern District sign what looks like a warrant for their arrest, but it's his fake warrant. It's a fake signature. People, they get scared, and I tell them just keep asking questions, and it'll reveal itself. And so just letting folks know they need to be vigilant. If they get anything like that, saying you got to pay it right now, or we're going to arrest you, you got to pay this late bill on your electricity, we're going to turn it off in 2 hours. Usually those types of things are scam. Call the power company directly. Find out. It happened to me. I was out of state, got a notice that they were going to turn my power off at 2 hours if I didn't pay it. And I called a friend of mine that worked at Mississippi Power, and he goes, "No, you've paid your bills. That's a scam." And so just you got to be vigilant. Don't just send money. Don't just wire money, and assume that it's probably a fraud. If they're texting you and demanding that you pay it immediately, they're going to turn your power off or put you in jail or take your car and all those kind of things. So,
well, thanks for clarifying that. I was at dinner this weekend with some folks out of town in West Point, actually, and I got one of those. It's not the first time I've received that same crazy, an obvious scam. At least to me, just looking at the language is just shaky, right. But 5 minutes later, the person next to me got the same one.
Well, and even if you look at the where it's coming from, it's clearly not a government issued email, and it's usually not even a number from Mississippi if it's a text. So I mean, if you're owing a Mississippi agency money, you're going to get something that 601, 662. 228. I mean, there's certain area codes that everybody ought to know, and if it's showing up international, you're definitely getting scammed.
Yeah, it's a shame, and they wouldn't do it if it didn't work. I mean, some people are in fact going online and clicking the link, giving them their credentials, sometimes paying money.
That's right, and so folks panic, they get nervous, and again, what I would caution folks is if you're being told you got to do it right now, or your license is going to be suspended, or you got to do it right now, or you're going to get arrested. That's usually a scam when they're putting that kind of pressure on you to do something immediately. And yes, of course, people fall for it. And we've tried to do public notices. We've put it out on social media. We've come on SuperTalk. We've gone on TV stations and just tried to advise the public, be cautious when you get this. And particularly, there's seniors that they get this and really get worried about it. They might not be on social media. They might not get our messages. And so, if you have any doubts, call a family member, talk through it with them too. And again, be very cautious because they're doing this for a reason. And if they send this message out to everybody in Mississippi and they get just 1%, half of 1% to respond and send them $300, that's a pretty good.
It's a lot of money. Yeah, and like I said, and I tell these people all the time, if it didn't work, they wouldn't do it.
That's right.
Just simple as that. And unfortunately, unsuspecting people fall for it.
Well, and even the Secretary of State's battled it with the LLCs. You got to file annual reports, and it's not necessarily illegal. They'll send out notices saying, "Hey, you owe your annual report. Send us $300, and we'll do it for you." Or the alternative is you can go on the Secretary of State's website and do it for free.
Yeah.
So, don't fall for that. It's not necessarily a scam, but they're ripping you off.
Yeah. The summer driving season, of course, is upon us now. And of course, talking to your folks, your communications folks, Captain Termseen, of course, comes on all the time and gives us an update on that. How are we doing? What are we looking like this year? And are we seeing an uptick in crashes and issues on our highways now that we're driving a lot more?
Well, yes, and it's unfortunate. Mississippi normally ranks 1 or 2 in the nation when it comes to teenage fatalities on our roadways. We have seen some improvements in the motor carrier area, and the fatal crashes with commercial vehicles is down for Mississippi. I attribute that to the hard work of the Highway Patrol and our CTED division, and so that is progress. But nowadays with distracted driving and then over holiday weekends drinking and driving and other things, it can be really dangerous out on our roadways and really super speeders. I mean, I've got an old 96 Bronco that I bought in 1995. If I do 85 in that thing, the mirrors start falling off and everything starts shaking inside. So cars were built a lot different. Nowadays that you get in these cars and people are doing 100 miles an hour and they don't even necessarily realize it. So, all those things combined for deadly roadways. And one of the things that I'm most proud of as commissioner and working with our legislators in leadership and the Department of Education is starting in the 26-27 school year, it'll be mandatory that every school in Mississippi offer driver's education. And in order to get a driver's license, you're going to have to have graduated from a driver's education course. And so I'm hoping, praying, and hopefully that will result in safer roadways for generations to come in our state.
Well, that was a standard when I was in high school. We got away from that for a while, right?
I think we did, and it really hit my attention when my now 17-year-old was going through that time with his learner's permit and getting his driver's license, and he was a student at Gulfport High, and for whatever reason at that time they did not offer driver's education. Now they have since brought it back. But all the things we teach our kids, those are one of those life skills that is very important.
Yeah.
And in making sure that we get those types of curriculums back in our schools, whether it's how to balance your checkbook or how to drive a car, those are life skills that are very important that these teenagers learn. And as parents, we try to emphasize them. But having dealt with teenagers now, having 3 of them in my house, sometimes as a parent, you're the last person they really want to listen to. So getting at school, I think, is good. And those are the types of life skills I'd like to see in more of our schools each and every day. The other great component of this is there is a law enforcement component. Major Polis with the Highway Patrol has been working with the Department of Education, coming up with the ways that law enforcement can come into the curriculum and talk about interaction with law enforcement, things to do and not do. And the reality is a lot of these kids get their first interaction with law enforcement is the first time they get pulled over, and sometimes they panic, sometimes they do things they shouldn't, like start digging in the glove box. And the law enforcement officer approaches a car, they don't know what that person's reaching for. So just kind of going through some of the basic guidelines of the what to do, and then the process, the time to argue about the citation isn't on the side of the road, but it's in a court of law.
Can you hang around?
Absolutely.
We keep talking. We got Commissioner Sean Tindell with the Department of Public Safety. When we come back, maybe we can dig into the budget and the legislative aspect of that and see how that affected your agency.
Absolutely. We'd love to.
All right, Commissioner. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
What? This is so
Awesome. On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Okay, my wife and I used to disco dance to that. I just want you to know that. I'm sort of telling on myself here. The stack's about like that, and the bell bottom's about that wide, and so forth. So
those were the days.
Yeah,
they say.
that I'm gonna guess that's. Look it up for me, Rhino. 78, 79 when she made that.
79.
79. Okay, had it. We got Commissioner Sean Tindell in the Element Well studio. So. Were you a little nervous during the period between the adjournment, I guess, as it would be called, for the legislature, and them coming back and having a special session to get a budget cranked out?
I think with all the things that we deal with at DPS, worrying about them getting the budget done was pretty low on my priority list, and I wasn't that nervous about it. I was nervous about where the numbers would end up.
Okay.
But I knew that they would get it done, and I knew if they didn't get it done, particularly with public safety, we were just going to keep doing what we do. I mean, it's not one of those jobs where we can just take off.
Sure.
And so I'm sure, and I'd met with Governor Reeves, that we had some plans on how to make sure that our troopers and law enforcement agents Capitol Police were getting paid even if there was no budget. So,
okay.
But that being said, the legislature has been very good to the Department of Public Safety over the last 5 years, and I've worked hand in hand with the legislative leadership, trying to make sure that we get the resources we need to be successful. And we've had, under Governor Reeves' leadership, 5 consecutive patrol schools in each year of his administration. We've expanded Capitol Police. We're building a new headquarters. We're doing a lot of great things that the legislature has been behind and absolutely supported. It's a little frustrating, to be honest, for the process to kind of stop when it did. And then just pick up with a 2-day session that came in and went, and there really wasn't a lot of input from the agencies like there normally is over a conference weekend. It just seemed to be, all right, here's the numbers and here you go. It resulted in a $3 million cut in general funds for the agency, but our special funds were increased. So to the extent that affects us, we're trying to work through that and understand it. So. But all in all, we're going to keep, like I said, we're going to keep doing what we do. And if there's things that we need to do that we don't necessarily have in our budget, I will be back knocking on their door saying we need more money to accomplish the mission you want us to do, which is a safer Mississippi.
Sure. Okay. What about Commissioner the big beautiful bill that Congress is poised to pass? Is there any federal funds that you're concerned about?
We are. We oversee millions of dollars of federal grants that impact local agencies in a variety of capacities. And so we feel very good that a lot of those are going to be secured. President Trump has been committed to law enforcement across the country, and I just believe if it's working, he's not going to touch it. But if there's waste and things that he sees that could be better utilized in forms of different grants, it might get shifted around. So,
okay.
If one gets closed, that could open up the opportunity to expand another one. And a prime example of that is some of our bulletproof vest programs and things like that I think are very positive and are a positive impact for law enforcement. And so it might be that there's more grant funds put into that and some taken away from some other more, I guess you could say, useless grants that have obviously been put out by the federal government.
Okay. So overall, you feel like you're in pretty good shape from a funding perspective to carry out the mission of the department.
I do, and I take a little bit of a different approach to appropriations than some of the other agency heads. My boss gives me a little bit of grief about showing up and always asking for more money because he is very much a fiscal conservative. But I remind him what I'm doing is I'm trying to lay out things that we can invest money in. It's up to them to decide if that's the direction they want to go, and so if you liken it to your house, when you go to buy a house, you look at a lot of different ones before you settle in on the one that you choose, and you might look at some that you can't afford. You look at some that you can afford more than that, and then ultimately you make the decision. So I just try to put it all out there. We can add cybersecurity. We can have 700 troopers. We can have a larger Capitol Police. If these are the things that you want, this is what it's going to cost. Tell me what you want us to do, and we're going to accomplish that mission.
Yeah. Your staffing levels, are you satisfied with that? You looking to beef that up somewhat?
I think ideally we would have right now we have about 350 troopers on the road. And so I'd like to see us get that up closer to 450 on the road. And then a number of those are also MBI agents and administration and doing other roles with the agency. So I think we ideally would like to have about 100 more troopers, and we're getting there. I mentioned that we've had 5 consecutive patrol schools under Governor Reeves' administration. That's the first time that's happened since Governor Fordyce was in office. And so we went through 8 years with only 1 patrol school. So I think once we start kind of getting caught up, we'll see those numbers increase, and I think that's a positive impact for the state. And look, I do believe in 20 years what Highway Patrol does is going to be vastly different because technology is going to change, and I think there will come a time when you get in your car and say, "Take me to Jackson,"
right.
It's going to drive you.
I agree.
There. So what we are going to have, technology is going to change those things, but we're always going to have bad guys, and I want the best of the good guys chasing those bad guys.
Okay.
And so we're gonna look at ways that we can improve our training, change some of our training, so that we can be the bad guys going after the cyber criminals, these scams, going after the rapists and the murderers, and make sure that our folks are trained to be a broader state law enforcement agency than what they've been in the past. And part of that, if you look at Louisiana, the Louisiana State Police, or Alabama, the Alabama Law Enforcement Agency, is making sure that we're training our troopers to meet the needs across the state of a statewide police force.
Yeah. Okay. Well, all that sounds good. Interaction with the neighboring states, some of that goes on, right?
Absolutely, and not just the neighboring states. I was in Massachusetts a couple of weeks ago. Of course, I was there for pleasure. I took my 15-year-old up there to watch the Red Sox play the Braves.
Awesome.
But while I was there, I met with the colonel of the Massachusetts State Police and the undersecretaries of public safety up there, and try to get ideas about what they're doing and things that we could do here. But we also meet with our counterparts in Louisiana, Tennessee, and Alabama regularly, and have conversations. And another big component that what we've done is really try to reach out from the Department of Public Safety standpoint and meet with our sheriffs, meet with our police chiefs, and find ways that we can assist local departments from the state level. And just last week we met with the sheriffs. Next week we're meeting with the Police Chiefs Association, and that's really been a big emphasis with Governor Reeves as well, is trying to make sure that the local departments know that we're here to work with them and enhance public safety across the state.
And you said 350. The current number of troopers in the state?
We have 500, but about 100 of those are MBI agents, and then another 50 or so in administration. So we have about 350 working the roads. I'd like to see us get closer to 450 working the roads.
Has the president's closing of the border, have you seen any difference in just the traffic in the state coming from the border and flowing through Mississippi?
I think there's been a reduction. Now, I haven't looked at the numbers to back that up, but just from what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling and what I'm hearing, you look at overdose deaths, they're starting to go down, and I think a lot of that is we're seeing less fentanyl in our community. So we're going to keep an eye on that and really take a look probably at the end of the year and see what kind of impact his first year of this term has had, and then obviously what they're doing with ICE and immigration, and I think is also having an impact. It's been very, very, very active, and so down on the coast, they recently had a big bus with a chicken fighting ring, and you're seeing more and more of those types of busts across the state.
Okay, you mentioned in the first segment, Commissioner, which really kind of startled me, that we're 1 or 2 in terms of teenage fatalities. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
To what do you attribute that?
Well, I mean, it's been that way for 30 years. And I started looking at a map across the country of states that require driver's education to get a driver's license, and we were one of the ones that didn't. Okay. So, and that was one of the big selling points of, I know it's going to cost money, but how many lives are we going to lose to teenagers? And we all know them. You know them. I know families that have lost a teenager to a fatal car accident, and many of them could be avoided. So, I think driver's education is a huge component of that. Again, the distracted driving, we looked at some different things that we could try to implement for teenage drivers, whether it be the number of people that can be in the car with them, trying to enforce more, no texting and driving, and have greater penalties for that. But really, education is just such a big thing, and making sure that before they get behind the wheel, they're comfortable with the rules of the road, they're comfortable on the road, and they learn how to drive just better.
Yeah. Well, let's hope that makes a difference. I know that's the purpose of it and why there are so many that advocated for it. But we got to get off the list there. We don't want to be on the top of the list on that.
That's right. And you think, again, just lives that are lost. And I told my friends in the legislature when we were debating the merits of it, I said, this will be one of the things that you do. It'll save lives, but you'll never know whose life it saves.
That's
so you'll never get a big clap for it. You'll never get a big award. But you will run across somebody that if you hadn't done this, they wouldn't be here today.
I completely agree. I appreciate that. Commissioner Sean Tindell with the Department of Public Safety has been our guest. Thanks for coming on, Commissioner.
Good to
Always
see you.
Enjoy it. Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
We're stepping aside for a break. Coming right back from the Element Wealth Studio.
From the Seabrook.
Attention, adoring fans! It's time for
Middays with Gerard Gibert on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
There you go. Luke, as he is known, lead guitarist. Oh, man. And, of course, the Porcaro brothers, Jeff on the drums, Steve on the synthesizer. They were something, man. That's some talented dudes in that band. David Pake, Bobby Kimball, Joseph Williams as well, all played in that. Toto, Hold the Line. Took away a bunch of awards. I don't remember the year, 83, 84, something like that. The Red album, I think, was released that year. Man, they came away with a bunch of awards at the Grammys. Big time. We're back with you in the Element Well studio. Ricky.
Got a bit of breaking news on the plane crash.
Yeah, what's up?
The BBC is now reporting that there is one known survivor of the Air India Boeing 787 crash. Vishwash Kumar Ramesh, age 40. Apparently, according to him, quote, 30 seconds after takeoff, there was a loud noise and then the plane crashed. It all happened so quickly. When I got up, there were bodies all around me. I was scared. I stood up and ran. There were pieces of the plane all around me. Someone grabbed hold of me and put me in an ambulance and brought me to the hospital.
Wow. There
was some question about whether or not his story was true because there's a video of him apparently, and he's dirtied up. He's got dust on his white T-shirt and stuff, but he doesn't appear to be injured at all, and he's walking fine. But the BBC's reporting it. He was reportedly sitting in seat 11A, and they've got a picture of his plane ticket with the immigration stamp on it.
It's incredible. I mean, just looking at the crash scene, are you a bit shocked that anybody survived it?
Yeah.
I am too. That's good news. So what little you can find in this catastrophe, for sure, this disaster. Ricky in Aberdeen says, I'm driving every day in my job and constantly see texting, I think he means, and driving with their head in their lap. It's a big old problem, and I don't guess I understand why in Mississippi, though. I mean, this is happening everywhere. Why are we top of the list with these teenage fatalities? What's unique about our state? I do hope that the compulsory training, driver's ed training, will have an impact because we got to get off the top of that list. That's not good at all. So I'm glad to see we're making some investments in that. The president's still conducting a press conference. So, Rhino, I think it's fair to say, since we've been on the air, he's answered more questions than Joe Biden did his entire damn four-year term. Is that accurate?
It's a possibility, yeah.
5 minutes, maybe 2 or 3 scripted, orchestrated, predetermined questions, maybe. Most of the time, he just walked away. Hey, which way do I go? I mean, this guy's still at the podium taking questions. Now they're talking about Ukraine and Russia. So we went from California EV mandates to the Treasury. The head of the department, the Federal Reserve, losing my train of thought there, and possible changes there being rumored, and him imploring the Fed chairman to cut the rates. Now we're talking about Russia and Ukraine. And he's talking about Iran. There's concerns about Iran doing a little nuclear saber rattling, if you will. That's one of the reasons oil popped up.
And there were some people talking pretty seriously about Iran's saber rattling because the head of state was disappeared and out of the country.
Yeah, there's some concern there. Brian in Clarksdale says, do you recommend getting smart ass with scammers? We were talking about that with the commissioner, Sean Tindell. That does seem to be a common one floating around these days. You get a random text that says, with a link in it, you need to pay your ticket now or you're going to lose your license and we're coming to pick you up, and all the other fear-mongering language they use. The only thing I'll say in response to that, no, I don't. I delete it and report it. I don't engage. The exception is some of these crazy social media messages you'll get. And it's usually kind of starts, have you heard about the this, that, and the other? And, they're trying to bait you into, no, how do I get $10,000? Something like that. What I'll often do is I will engage. I find that to be a little less risky. And I'll engage, say, no, please, do tell. And I'll let them go through, and I'll ask them some questions. And now, at this point in the conversation, they haven't revealed the amount. That's kind of how they get you going, right? And then I'll finally ask, well, how much is it? Is available here? How much do I stand to gain? And they'll tell you, and I always tell them, oh, shoot, I'm rich. I don't need that. I tell them, just to get them to go away. They don't know what to say to that.
With how obvious a lot of these financial scams are, I hate to admit this, but I have a hard time feeling much sympathy for a lot of people that get taken on these, because a lot of them are blatantly, obviously scams.
Yeah.
But I do have some sympathy for the young, naive men out there, especially in light of June as Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. I was once a young, naive lad with more hormones than sense. I'm glad I didn't grow up in the day and age of all of these bots on social media. Like, for example, I just pulled up my message requests from Twitter. From Aaron, hey, I like your avatar style. From Sophia, how's your morning been so far? From Mally, oh, wow, hi. From Natalie, hey, what good books have you read lately? From Lily, how are you doing? From Maria, hi, nice to meet you. How are you doing? I can imagine some lonely, naive dude falling down a rabbit hole talking to some bot that he thinks is some long-lost love or some potential suitor. And it's only going to end badly for him.
I love it. Well, while we were sitting here, I got a text. And this is one that has 3 people. It's a group. It's the texter and me and one other person. You've seen this. Hello, I apologize for bothering you. I am Emily from an app development company. We would like to offer you an online remote job. You can work for 60 to 90 minutes every day, earning between $100 and $500 per hour. With your flexibility to choose your working hours and location, paid daily. However, please note that you must be at least 25. If you want more details, give me a yes or a no. It's they're pretty creative, no doubt. On the C Spire text line, older people are vulnerable. I would say that's largely true. They're just maybe more trusting of technology and don't really think about there are crazy people out there engaged in these kinds of scams, and they're more likely to fall for it. I would agree.
Which seems counterintuitive, because it's the older generations that were so wary of scams and the internet, telling you not to put your name on there and don't tell people where. I mean, that's been going back to the early days of the internet. The older generations were telling the younger generations, don't trust the internet, and now they're getting bamboozled by the internet.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. That's a good point. The president, by the way, just concluded. He's working the room, shaking hands at the White House. So he ended by saying that we must get the big, beautiful bill passed. So just a range of subjects. I mean, you have to give it to the guy. We started out with California EV mandates and pivoted to the Federal Reserve and his belief that Fed Chairman Jerome Powell is being stubborn and should reduce interest rates. Start talking about Ukraine-Russia conflict, then the threat of Iran, now the big, beautiful bill. So he basically covered almost all the major issues. He talked a little bit about the situation in L.A., of course, as well, with the riots that's front and center in the news these days. But I just got to give it to him, man. For 2 hours, it seems like, since we've been on the air, he's been at that podium taking questions with no notes and no script and no list of reporters he has been instructed to call on with canned questions ready to go. That's what we got during the entire Biden administration.
In fairness, it's a pretty low bar to clear.
That is true. I mean, you're right about that. And the only reason it's even noteworthy and worthy of bringing up is because it's such a stark contrast with the prior guy. He's doing what a president should do. We're coming right back in the Element Well studio.
Up of Mississippi.
Come on. Middays with Gerard Gibert.
All right, we are back
on SuperTalk, Mississippi.
We are back with you in the Element Well studio. Appreciate you joining us. Thomas in Greenwood says, wouldn't cutting spending and the debt reduce the interest we pay? Seems Republicans and a Republican president would do that rather than call for the Fed to cut interest rates. As an individual, I'd cut spending and pay down my debt before I ask my credit card company to cut my interest rate. Okay. That's fair enough. I don't think you're going to see any major decreases, if at all, in deficits, which deficits, of course, are added to the debt. So that's not likely to happen. And in fact, if you look at the One Big Beautiful Bill, just so you'll know, it actually calls for spending of about $8.6 trillion per year on average over the 10 years. We're presently at a $7 trillion clip of annual spending. So we're looking at 8.6. The expectation by the administration is that the reduction of regulations and also making the Trump tax cuts permanent and then adding in some of the other tax provisions, that all that combined is going to significantly stimulate economic growth, and economic growth is going to translate into more revenue for the Treasury. That would come from increased corporate profits and, of course, an increase in wages and capital gains subject to federal income tax at the individual level. That's the expectation. In fact, some economists have pegged that at a $4 trillion increase in revenue over 10 years. Resulting from those policies. That's $400 billion a year, of course. That seems high, excessive to me. I hope that's the case. That would certainly help a lot towards curbing and curtailing our $2 trillion deficits. That is what we're on track to produce this year. $2 trillion. Actually, it's at about $2.3 trillion is the run rate based on the most recent Treasury report. If you annualize the latest data from the Treasury, and that would be through the month of April. Haven't seen the May report yet. And that's means you got little more than half the year remaining. If you annualize that figure, it comes out to about $2.3 trillion, which is just massive, monumental. Really hard to believe that we're producing that level of deficits in this country. But it's true. What else we got on the C Spire text line? Oh, Emily has lots of jobs. She is always offering me $500K working capital for my business. Yeah. It's not always Emily, though, on the 662. Sometimes it's someone else's name, but the scammers are out there, man. No doubt about it. Someone, CC in Senatobia, I saw this, CC, as well. It's pretty good. Someone asked a question about Trump supporting peaceful protests yesterday, and Caroline Levitt responded, "Of course he does." What a stupid question. They're wanting to really paint the president as opposing any form of protesting, including peaceful protesting, which we certainly support here, and we believe you have a right to do so. But you obviously crossed the line, and any rational, clear-thinking, logical person understands that when you start destroying the property of others and you disrupt just basic functions within a city, make highways unpassable, keep people from going to their place of business, assault police officers, you're not peacefully protesting. How hard is that to figure out? But they still want you to believe that to some extent that qualifies as peaceful protesting. And they also want you to think that any little minor situations where some sort of vandalism or violence is occurring, well, that's Trump's fault. They're like Teflon. Nothing sticks to them. They're also just not very bright. Why can't they just acknowledge and accept, no, this is wrong?
Because that requires introspection, and if they started actually looking inward, they might discover how horrible they actually are.
This is just common sense. We're not talking about third-order calculus here.
Common sense is not so common, and it's rare, if at all, existing on the list.
Sadly. Elton John bumping us out here. Back with you after Fox News and SuperTalk News with Dr. Lance Evans, the Superintendent of the Mississippi Department of Education.
Get ready to go beyond the headlines and join a meaningful conversation with people from around the state. Hello? You're listening to Middays with Gerard Gibert here on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. Hour 3, the afternoon portion of Middays, is now live from the Element Wealth Studio on this
Friday Eve.
We're pleased to welcome now Dr. Lance Evans. He is the Superintendent of the Mississippi Department of Education. Dr. Evans, thanks for coming in or calling in today.
Yes, sir. How are you doing?
Doing fantastic. So we wanted to have you on to talk about Mississippi receiving the ranking of 16th in terms of our educational performance in the K-12 space in the country. I mean, this is incredible. Great progress for the state. Tell us about that.
Yeah, first of all, that's a tribute to our educators and the students and the administrators with their hard work. It's been amazing to see this climb over the previous years. And especially when you think back to 2014, where we were ranked 48th in this same rankings, to move over the last years. Of course, last year we were ranked 30th, and then moving to 16th this year. That's just it's a tribute. A lot of it is attributed to that academic success. Those NAEP rankings that we received, and the graduation rate increasing the way it has. That's all of that just culminating into, because there's multiple indicators that the Casey Foundation uses. So, but again, it relates directly back to that academic performance of our students and the work that's taking place in our school districts across the state.
What's the difference, Dr. Evans? I mean, what changed in that short period of time to boost our rankings so significantly?
I would attribute, obviously, like I do this all the time, because this is absolutely where the rubber meets the road is what's happening in the classrooms. But I would say also just that targeted approach that the department is taking and the support that they're providing to the districts. And then, of course, all of our districts buying in and everyone being on the same page. That Literacy-Based Promotion Act that went into place 10, 11 years ago now, that was a huge step forward, and the literacy work that's happened, the math work that's happened. We're rolling out an adolescent literacy initiative this coming year, as well as a wider math initiative that you'll see. And it's just, I really believe it's that targeted approach. I've always equated it to, and I hate to use shooting as an example, but it's like shooting a shotgun at something, you may or may not move it, you may or may not hit it, versus that more of a rifled approach, right? Where the target that you're aiming for, you put your efforts behind it, and it moves the needle. And I will tell you this, I also think a lot of it is attributed to the approach that the department has taken in support, and the fact that we utilize a coaching model to build the educator rather than just more of a tutoring type approach. Because we believe here at the department that we have to build the educator, because as the students go through their K-12 career, if you will, it's those teachers that we have to build, because they're going to be there. Our goal is to recruit and retain high quality teachers, and when we bring them into the system, that we're providing that support for them, because that's that direct link to the classroom, obviously, as the educator.
Gotcha. Do you think there's been perhaps any change in approach or attitude or just focus in the homes of our students that is just enabling them to perform better in the classroom?
I do think that is definitely, thank you for bringing that point up. I should have brought that point up. I think it's a clear understanding of parents and the communities as to what those expectations are. That's, the more you can, I guess I'm going to use the term demystify what's supposed to take place.
Yeah.
And you inspect what you expect, and our districts and the state as a whole we have a very clear target, very clear expectation as to what we're trying to accomplish. And again, like I alluded to just a minute ago, we're increasing those expectations. We are with that adolescent literacy initiative, that 4 through 8 piece, because we've been focused on the K through 3 piece over the last 10 years, broadening that math initiative. I think you'll see these rankings continue to rise. And this is not something that you can, in a school district, you can really see a large impact on a very quick basis. From a statewide standpoint, it takes a couple of years, because, your average is the entire state. So that's why we're continuing, obviously, while we celebrate our successes, I tell people all the time, I'm the type human that has a really big windshield and a small rearview mirror. I remember those successes, and we remember that, what we've done in the past, but where that windshield has to be really large, so that we're making sure and we focus on our shortcomings as a state. That's how we at the department design our support, is on the areas that, we feel as though even in times of great success, we're looking at, well, where could we have done better? What specific grade, what gaps, where are the gaps? Where are the shortcomings in between transitions, in between grades, So that's why you see these initiatives continue to be pushed forward. And you also see, we're at a point in time at the end of this assessment season, going into the next year, where you'll see those expectations, the proficiencies, the cuts, ratcheted up again. Because, we've had this conversation, I think you and I did this probably a couple of months ago when we talked about the resetting of cut scores and moving forward with assessment. I believe this is just an example of that another step in that evolutionary process of us moving the entire state forward.
So what's the methodology, Dr. Evans? Is there a third party who specializes in conducting these measurements and just, I guess, computing the ratings? What's the methodology behind that?
So basically what they look at, and not to get like really into the weeds, because to be honest with you, I would have to, that getting into they're comparing on a state by state basis, and they're looking at, the 4 indicators, the 4 primary indicators they look at are young children not in school. They look at 4th grade reading. They look at 8th grade math, and they look at your high school graduation rate.
Okay.
And of course, all of those things are areas that we've seen improvements, which attribute obviously to our increased success. So those are there, like when you look on their website, those are their 4 primary focus areas.
Okay.
And again, of course, they take those focus areas and they look at it across the entire nation. So as we see our NAEP scores increase and we see our performance, academic performance increases across the state, well, obviously that just kind of it's obvious why we're seeing these increases in our comparisons. Because when you see other states, they're not seeing those same gains as we're seeing.
Well, I want to say congratulations to you and everybody involved here. And I know you would agree that it's a team effort. You got lots of teachers, administrators, and we can't leave out the parents and the students as well. Obviously, they all put forth amazing effort to make this happen. And where I was going with this is getting national news. I mean, Mississippi's now being looked at as maybe you guys need to be doing what they're doing here in Mississippi. You got to feel good about that.
It does make you feel good, but I will tell you the main thing we have to always here at the department that we have to always remember is we provide programming here. We provide services here. That we have to always remember that the magic happens in the school districts. The magic happens with the parents, the students, the teachers, the administrators. That's where it all happens. We always maintain that focus here. It's important. We have to stay relevant here at the department to make sure we're providing the adequate support for the districts and that we're not in left field, right? That we're focusing on what moves the needle, and that's what drives us here. Because don't ever, not to repeat myself, but we never forget where the work is done. And while the people here at MDE, we do work very hard, but we always understand that magic happens in that classroom. Okay.
I mean, it's no doubt. It's a team effort, and there's just so much you guys can do in the classroom as well. And that's why I wanted to bring up the parents and the students, because you obviously can't control what happens outside of the classroom, but it plays a key role in performing well inside the classroom. Your industry knows that.
And yes, sir. And I think a lot of it, and I think this is probably holds true in a lot of states, but for sure in Mississippi, it comes back to those relationship pieces and the department having a good relationship with the districts, and the districts obviously having a good relationship with the parents, and then everybody, and you've said it twice, everybody's on the same page.
Yeah.
And everybody's pushing forward, wanting what's best, obviously for our students and our districts and our communities. Because our communities, they have to demand that excellence as well.
Yeah.
And, our communities have to hold our districts accountable. Our districts hold the department accountable. So it's all part of that process. And you said it. It's a huge team effort. It is. Everyone has a very important part in the process for sure.
Well, it's awesome, and we appreciate you coming on the program and talking to us about it, Dr. Lance Evans, the Superintendent of the Mississippi Department of Education. Appreciate it, Lance, and please again send our congratulations to the entire team and everybody involved in the education industry here in the state of Mississippi. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir. I appreciate your acknowledgement of it. Thank you, sir, very much.
Thank you. We're coming right back in the Element Wealth studio.
Patriotism is alive.
Covering the stories that matter most to Mississippians. Gerard Gibert. Middays with Gerard. Super Talk, Mississippi.
Welcome back, everyone. Middays from the Element Wealth studio. Are you thinking about or planning for retirement? Do you have a plan? Go to myelementwealth.com or call 601-957-6006 to let Element Wealth help you find your balance between income, growth, and guarantees. Today on In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar, you'll hear an interview with heavy metal drummer Sean Drover. In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar is presented by Superior Catfish. Remember, there's catfish, then there is Superior Catfish. It's U.S. farm-raised catfish with homegrown flavor. Ask for it by name at your favorite store or restaurant. Go to superiorcatfish.com for more info. And don't forget, tomorrow In a Mississippi Minute with Steve Azar and Sports Talk Mississippi. They're going to be at the Greenville Country Club for the annual Delta Soul Celebrity Golf and Charity event. Tons of celebrities will be on hand, from actors, musicians, and sports stars. That's the Delta Soul Celebrity Golf and Charity event in Greenville tomorrow. Let's hope and pray it does not rain. Seems to have been a regular occurrence there at the tournament the last few years.
Have you seen Drover's drum kit he played with Megadeth?
Have not.
That thing is massive.
I can't comprehend just hitting the few pieces of equipment I have. I can't imagine having more pieces added to the kit.
Oh, he's got the full double bass. Got
gosh.
Like 15 cymbals. It is a sight to behold.
I got 3 cymbals and a hi-hat, and that's enough. About all I can handle for sure. Couple of mounted toms and a floor tom, bass drum, snare drum. Pretty much a standard sort of kit. Andy in Tupelo says, I don't care about rankings. I care about being able to direct my child's education as I see fit, and not the state of Mississippi directing your child's education as far as where they will receive that with the money allocated to the child. And so I hear you, Andy, and I know you're a big proponent of school choice, as am I. I'll point this out, that Dr. Evans' job is to make sure that K-12 public education in Mississippi is performing optimally. That's his job. The school choice issue, of course, is a matter for our lawmakers in the legislature. And you well know that's something we're unable to get going here in Mississippi. The lieutenant governor was on with Richard Cross. Was that yesterday, Rhino? I think it was yesterday. Yeah, and he indicated again that he's not a big fan of education freedom, education choice in the state of Mississippi. We'll continue to work on it, and we'll see whether or not the 2026 legislative session does the trick, and some enhancements to what exists right now in the state of Mississippi with respect to school choice can get across the finish line. At this point, we know where the lieutenant governor stands. There are others in the Senate. Of course, it passed the House, and it has passed the House the last couple of years of various bills. The one that got the most attention this year was a measure that would simply provide open enrollment, portability. You would not be compelled to attend a school based on your address. You could choose to go to any school. And the school to which you were assigned could not block such a transfer. That bill did not even get put on the table in the Education Committee in the Senate after having passed the House. Very disappointed in that. So, but I did want to point out, however, that Dr. Evans' job is not really to get involved in advocating for or against school choice. And I've not heard him say anything about it, honestly, Rhino. I've not seen any public comments related to that. We have seen numerous superintendents and administrators at the district level. They've certainly voiced their concerns and their opposition. I don't know that I've seen any that have come out and very explicitly supported such legislation, but I've definitely seen opposition. My home county of Madison in particular put a flyer out, you remember, early in the year that had talking points that, I don't remember the title of the flyer, but it's basically why we oppose school choice, maybe paraphrasing a bit, and gave several reasons in their view why school choice should not be enacted in the state of Mississippi, protecting, of course, their domains. And that is a widely held sentiment across the state in the K through 12 public school community. And they, of course, make their concerns and their opposition known to our lawmakers, who seem to react and seem to be influenced by that to a great extent. Andy says, but he is also quoted as saying the only option for Mississippi education should be public education. Okay, I assume he's talking about Dr. Evans. Fair enough. That would pretty much indicate. I haven't seen that, and I'll take your word for it there. Rhino, I'm not sure if you've seen such a statement. But that would indicate that the superintendent does not feel any degree of advocacy for expanding options to parents and students to attend education settings other than the traditional public school to which a student is tethered and connected. Paul in Hernando says, get rid of that jerk. Who's he talking about? Was he I don't know. Who's he talking about? The lieutenant governor, the superintendent, one of our other listeners? Given the big protest plan nationwide, says Gary in the Berg, perhaps this theme song from the worst movie ever made would make some good bumper music. And what is that there? Shape of Things to Come. Max Frost and the Troopers. I don't even think I'm familiar with that one. I really feel like more people would use a school choice for athletic reasons than academic reasons, says Josh from Laurel. Okay. I'm not sure about that. I have to think through that a little bit. There certainly could be some who want to attend a different school. But does that matter, though, honestly? I don't feel like that matters. As long as we have reasonable guidelines around capacity, and that is exactly what House Bill, as I recall, 1435, it did have provisions that required schools to report their capacity, their enrollment, their capacity, availability, essentially, to accommodate transfers before the year ever started. And as I recall, Rhino, that's the only reason a student could be denied admission if they applied to transfer from another one, right? Is it you just don't have room. Otherwise, you would be required to accept and approve their application for admission. The big part of it, though, of course, was that the transfer or school, as it is described in the bill, that's the one the student is attending based on their address, could not block the transfer. That's the key part of the legislation, and that because that's what happens today. And so they just won't let you go. Paul in Orlando says, oh, it's the lieutenant governor. I don't like him. Got you. What about the forced driver's ed for homeschool kids? You know, I'm not sure. We were talking about that with Commissioner Tindell. How would that work? You're going to homeschool or even private school? I suspect most private schools may not be required to, but would likely adopt driver's ed.
Well, I mean, if you've got to take a driver's ed course before you can legally get a license.
That's true. He did say that.
I would imagine you would have private entities popping up teaching publicly available driver's ed for private school students and homeschool students.
Right. I agree. So he did make that point, did he, that would be a requirement. You can't even attempt to get your driver's license unless you've completed that coursework. I don't think that's a bad idea at all.
The previous impetus for taking driver's ed was to get lower insurance rates.
That's exactly right. So how else are you supposed to learn how to drive if somebody doesn't teach you how to do it? I don't think you can just sit your tail behind the wheel in a car and go driving.
Oh, you'd be surprised.
Well, maybe that's why we're top of the list in terms of teenage fatalities. Could be a driving reason of that. We're stepping aside for a break. Half an hour of middays remains from the Element Wealth studio.
from
Middays with Gerard Gibert.
It is on.
On SuperTalk, Mississippi.
Have a little love on a little honeymoon. You got a little dish and you got a little spoon. A little bitty house and a little bitty yard. A little bitty dog and a little bitty car. Well, it's alright to be a little bitty. A little hometown or a big old city.
Oh, yeah, that's Alan Jackson.
Life goes on for a little bitty.
Little bitty. On the C Spire text line, Keith in Meridian says, administrative authorities are worried about their paychecks, all about the money. I said, with respect to school choice, I said, yeah, I know superintendents and principals from 3 different schools that make a ton of money. They have told me. I know it is a tough job, but not that tough. So I hear you, Keith, but I'll just say this. Everybody's about the money. Who's not? Who is not out there trying to protect their jobs and their livelihood? So I don't fault them for that. I fault the government for not implementing policies that would take down these protections. I'm fine with you seeking to protect your livelihood. I get that. Your way of life, your business, your income stream, all the above. Sure, everybody is. What I'm not for is government policy that precludes competition and freedom and choice. So your earnings should be based on the value you create, and the market is what determines whether or not what you created is of value. When the government steps in and says, we're going to kind of put a wall around this industry, if you will, and maybe that's a wrong term to describe education.
Well, it's nicer than what I was thinking. Little educational fiefdom.
Maybe I should refer to it when I was talking to Dr. Evans at the end there is the educational community. How about that? But nonetheless, the point is when government provides these protections in law that prevent competition, that prevent and suppress choice, which is what we have here. And in Mississippi, that also applies with the Certificate of Need laws. Same deal. That's preventing competition. It's protecting and limiting.
This is a great point from the 228. I don't think people have an issue with anyone protecting their livelihood. The issue is that they're using children as a shield.
Agree with that completely. Totally on board. I don't know that does that make it any worse? I mean, you could say health care as well. You could say that, someone's health, using that as a shield. So, but I appreciate that. It's a valid point. It made me think about Randy Weingarten. I mean, nobody does that more egregiously than she does. All the yelling and carrying on and just gets into these rages, these tirades, and lectures everybody. She clearly is an unstable person. You guys know who she is. She's head of one of the big educators union. And yeah, she's all about that protectionist type policy suite. And she's just a disgusting individual in my view, because it does seem like she's always trying to point fingers at others who simply want choice. Or maybe during COVID when she kind of rose to fame, no, we want our kids back in school here. And you're saying, no, we're not, did Randy Weingarten. We're not going back to school until you give us hundreds of billions of dollars for all kinds of stupid stuff. HVAC.
Well, that's what she was saying back then. Now she's saying that they wanted the schools opened as soon as possible.
Yeah, she's lying because...
Well, her lips are moving.
Oh, man.
If a liberal's lips are moving, there's a pretty good chance you're hearing a lie.
So true. So
because they don't live in reality. They live in la-la land where everything's sunshine and rainbows.
On the C Spire text line, education shouldn't be a business. Money shouldn't be the priority. It's got to be economically viable, though. I hear what you're saying, though. I totally get it. But we might as well say, well, we shouldn't have to pay taxes for schools. It's got to be paid for somehow. There's still an economic component to it. You can't deny that. And the old saying, you get what you pay for, I would argue that applies as well. And I don't fault teachers, administrators, superintendents for trying to improve their incomes. I don't fault anybody for that. I think that's what makes a thriving society, honestly.
But I think it would be fair to point out how some school districts just spend without any real thought towards the actual education of students. For example, when I was coming up, computers were a relatively new thing to be teaching the students. I know I wasn't the first generation to be taught how to use a computer, but we were still using the Apple IIs and stuff like that. And the Macintosh, and we were learning, but we were learning in a computer lab or in the library. We were learning these new technologies in a specialized lab setting where you could focus on that. Well, fast forward, and some school districts felt the need to put smart boards in every classroom, even though half the teachers didn't know how to use them. Maybe don't put smart boards in every single classroom, and you might have more money left over to actually spend on the students.
No, I completely agree with you on that. I kind of separate those two. And by the way, K-12 public education, it's not a business from the perspective that it's looking to take in revenue and then spend money and have a profit left over. Businesses have to do that to survive. K-12 education and all government's not really built that way, designed that way. But, yeah, there's no excuse for poor planning and poor decision-making, as you described there. And I've said this before on the show. Back in those days, my company was the one that did all the smart boards, by the way. We had the partnership. And I can tell you, Rhino, and remember somebody got on to me about that when I mentioned this several months ago. We would get frustrated in that they would spend the money, as you indicate, on all the hardware and software, but they would fail to spend money on us to train them. Like, we're trying to rip you off because we want to train your people? Oh, no, we don't need that. And then you go back a year later, and what was happening? It's collecting dust, right? And they would fault us. Well, you're just trying to sell me something. Well, yeah, we are trying to sell you something, but it's something you need. You need training.
All while there's some broom closet full of old printers and stacks of boxes of printer paper that you got to use it or lose it in the budget.
I know. And that's, look, that bugged me as well, honestly. I actually had a conversation with a long ago state auditor about that, and and
before anybody tries to jump down our throats about you just hate education, Republicans hate education, we're talking about the administration wasting money here. The educators don't have a say in whether or not they get a smart board in their classroom or whether they spend all the money in the budget on boxes, reams of paper, and useless keyboards and printers that'll never get plugged in.
Completely agree. And by the way, this is not just education that's doing that.
Oh, no, it's the entirety of government.
That's exactly right. And it's not just IT equipment as well. It's unfortunately, there's lots of dumb procurement that happens because of the way the system is built. The system needs to be completely overhauled to prevent that.
Well, we bought everything we could possibly use. We still got $500 left. Well, there's this pallet of Bic pens for $500. Let's buy that.
That's totally true. But when you buy new technology like this, you need training. it's just silly to think you don't need it. And it wasn't all of them. It was just selected districts. It's like, yeah, we're going to bring them in so we can go tell everybody we got smart boards, but we're not going to train our teachers how to use the things and to actually use them to educate the students, because they are pretty neat and they're pretty powerful. Oh, yeah. There's no doubt about that. The capabilities were incredible. I mean, changed what education is like inside the classroom. A great training tool and aid, but you need to be trained. It wasn't intuitive. It's not something you can just sit down and, oh, yeah, I'm starting using a smart board. It's that kind of thing. So, but government sometimes doesn't make good decisions. You know, the private sector wouldn't do that. And the reason they won't do that is because somebody's butt's going to get in trouble if they spend a bunch of money on capital equipment and it collects dust. In the public sector, they just walk by it every day. I may be exaggerating a little bit, but probably not a lot.
There's probably more examples than the people against school choice would be willing to admit.
I would agree. Your point you make, it's not my problem. In this case, it's not my money, right? Yep. That's the way they look at it. In the private sector, that ain't how it works, because you're all going down if you don't spend responsibly. We're stepping aside, coming back with the final segment on Midday. Stay with us.
Think for a moment about everything.
Good for America. Good for fans of justice and truth. Good for us.
SuperTalk Mississippi.
This is what we stand for.
Yourself, my man, you'll never be what is in your heart.
So the technology we used to sell, by the way, the smart board stuff, Promethean was the name of the company. And we sold that across the region. Debbie from Ocean Springs says, no, we were trained on how to use a smart board. They were the best thing since sliced bread. Wish I had one now. Yeah, so Debbie, I didn't mean to generalize here by saying that none of the districts purchased training to go along with it. Yeah, it was just some. And unfortunately, a lot of times, those are the ones that needed it the most. And I'm not trying to be sort of condescending, but that usually is the case, is that the ones that probably could have eventually figured it out. It was just taking a longer period of time. And inevitably, when you don't subscribe to and complete the training, there's usually lots of, even though you figured out the basic use of it, there's lots of features and capabilities you didn't know existed. That's why the training is so valuable and so important. Also on the C Spire text line, Tim and McGee says, I remember years ago when it was a JT and Dave show, they always were saying that the school superintendents were making way too much money. And I hear you, but I guess my question always is, well, how much should they make? And how should that be set? So I maintain the market ought to dictate that. And it's the school districts that establish those pay rates and work those contracts out with the superintendents and the administrators. So it's on them. They're the ones that control that. They're the ones that negotiate those agreements for the pricing, the pay, I should say. As a parent of 2 children in public school, I think the Mississippi Miracle is amazing, but with cheating scandals now to have occurred in certain school districts in the state for the last couple of years, can we really say that the test results they're looking at for 4th grade and 8th grade are accurate? And I'm not sure. I wish we had more time with Dr. Evans to dig into that. And that's what I was talking about when I was asking, what I meant when I was asking about the methodology. It sounds to me like, though, that There's perhaps some tests that are administered at various levels, and so it's based on the scores of those tests plus the graduation rate. What was the other one, Rhino? There's 4 different elements, 4 different metrics that they use, indicators. I know that. I know those were 2 of them. That maybe it was math. There was at some point math, some point reading, like 8th grade math, 3rd grade reading, I think, graduation rate, something else. Is that right? Is what I recall. Well, there were 4 areas of evaluation and scoring that are completed to determine your ranking overall. Well, I neglected to say that when I was teaching in Tennessee, all I have is a projector now. That's Debbie from Ocean Springs. Geez. Yeah, the smart boards are pretty cool. I agree with you, Debbie. We had them in my business, as a matter of fact. Of course, we sold them, but they're useful in other settings besides education. Pretty neat technology, no doubt. Are you looking at that, what those metrics are?
Yeah, I'm trying to find it. I know they've got the 3rd grade reading gate, and I know they check it based on the reading test, and then they focus on graduation rate for overall, but I'm trying to find the breakdown.
I think it's 8th grade math. Isn't that when the math is assessed? I don't know why that sticks in my head, that it's 3rd grade for reading and 8th grade for math. And that's what's used to determine academic performance. Math at 8th grade, reading in 3rd grade, somebody helps out with that. And then I know graduation rate, I remember Dr. Evans saying that. There was something else. We know what's best for your children, in quotes. If you send your kids to Caesar, don't be surprised when they come back as Romans. School choice should be obvious on the C Spire text line. Thomas in Greenwood, of course, is a huge proponent of reducing the number of districts. He says, let's reduce them by 50%. The superintendent's salaries would no longer be a problem. Well, that's assuming that you're going to significantly increase their workload for the same level of pay. Would you do that, Thomas? Just a serious question. If your employer came to you and said, hey, look, we're going to increase your workload. Here's all the new things you got to do. By the way, your pay's staying the same. Would you do that? It's a serious question. So I do believe there are tremendous opportunities for school district consolidation to cut down on the back office overhead administrative costs. I absolutely believe that and would like to see the state pursue that. I just caution against any expectation that I do believe that would save a bunch of money. It's usually significantly less than what you could expect and what most people expect. He says, I'd cover what 16 people used to cover. Okay, your employer now says you got 32 you got to cover. We're out of here today. I'll be back Monday. I fill in tomorrow. Stay safe. God bless.
Robbie Stewart with East Macomb Body Shop, reminding you that it's your choice who repairs your vehicle, not your insurance company. Whether it's East Macomb Body Shop or someone else, choose wisely. Call East Macomb Body Shop at 601-684-4651, 501 Pearl River Avenue, Macomb.
A SuperTalk Mississippi media production.